The oh, there we go. I'll just do that. So as I was saying, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm coming to you from, the Boonwurrung, Boonwurrung and Wurundjeri Woiwurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nations. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and to any First Nations people with us this evening who continue to uphold the tradition of storytelling and connection. Hi, everybody. I'm Claire. For those who don't know me, I am described by Janine as the banter merchant of Space2b, which means that she thinks that I talk a bit. So I've been involved with Space2b from the very beginning, but it's actually Janine's and Mariam's stories that we'd like to share with everybody tonight, because it's been an incredible journey. First, good old housekeeping rules. I think everybody's on mute, which is great, because if you've got some hummus and carrot sticks, nobody wants to hear you chewing. If you haven't, it's great. Just sit back, relax. It's going to be fun. You're all muted, as I said. Yep, that's great. It's a bit like being in the theatre when they ask you to turn off your mobile phones. So here we go. We will have a chat section, so if anybody's got any questions a bit later that they would like to ask, please put your questions in the chat. If you would like to ask a question in person at the end, and we'll open it up to questions a bit later, then put up your hand and we'll ask you to come on, unmute yourself and come on and ask the question in person. So that's all the housekeeping. So I'm sure everybody is aware of the fact that at Space2b, people have the opportunity, and particularly newly arrived migrants, refugees and asylum seekers, to gain confidence in this new country through the many creative avenues that Space2b offers, to build and share their traditional skills, which are vast and magnificent, and to learn new ones, usually in a language that isn't their first. So a lot of people who've come through Space2b have been given the opportunity to practice their English in a setting that's very warm, trusting and embracing. But I'm not sure if everybody is aware that both Janine and Mariam also took that journey from another country to this great land down under. And I just wondered if, Janine, if you'd like to give us a bit of a rundown of where in the world you have come from. Oh God, that sounds like an alien.
Hi everyone. If you don't know, I'm Janine Laurie, and yeah, people, I often think, people don't like to be asked where they come from, for all sorts of reasons, and I never get asked where I come from. And I like being asked where I come from. People always think I'm English, but my father's Romanian. He's actually Jewish gypsy, which is quite unusual, I think. And his family left Romania, left everything behind, and have moved around the world for a long time. And my mum is half Argentinian and half English. And I was born in Uruguay, but I don't speak very good Spanish, as Barbara knows. But I understand everything. And yeah, we've moved all over the world many times. So I know what it feels like to come to a new country, to have no friends, to start all over again. And it's really hard, even though, in Australia, I have the same language and I haven't been through war or anything like that.
So some of the countries that you actually lived in, can you give us a bit of a rundown of where you've lived?
I started in Uruguay, then we went to France, Then we went to Malta, then we went to Spain, then we went to England, then we went back to Malta, no, it's Spain, and then I came here, and I've actually lived here longer than anywhere else.
So what is your native language then?
I don't speak any languages except English.
Except English. Okay, so you had to go to new countries that didn't necessarily have English as their first language and adapt as well.
Well, in France, I was little, so you pick up the language there, but then you forget it very quickly, don't you? And in Malta, they all spoke English. I've only picked up swear words in that country.
Yes.
And my mum and dad always conversed in English because it was their, except when they were in Argentina and Uruguay. It's complicated anyway, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And what about you, Mariam?
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mariam and I'm here tonight. I feel really privileged, first of all, and I want to thank you all for being with us tonight and supporting us in sharing our stories. So I know that you're here by invitation, but I also want to invite you into a circle of grace. And I feel that when, a community comes together and they sit in this circle of grace, a lot of things are possible, because in this circle, we can share our stories in a very unique way, in knowing that you are holding this space for us as listeners, and that in this space there is compassion, and that we can share our stories intimately. And as a storyteller myself and a story sharer, I know that when we are in this circle, we're also inviting our ancestors, because our story is not only ours. And in our African traditions, we don't believe in death. We believe in the continuation of life. And so I feel that this is a circle that is not only composed of us here, but we've got an entourage actually that are among us. And I feel that when we do that, we are proclaiming our love for humanity, and we are weeding out our conditioning and inviting the human spirit, in which we can elevate ourselves from the ignorances that are around us in the world today. And hence why you are in the space to be, because this is a space that Janine and I actually created with love and grace. We felt very grateful to be part of the Australian community. And once we were established ourselves, we knew how hard it is to really be part of a community and to belong. And so having done the journey ourselves and having done it alone, at that time we didn't have support systems that were in place. That is what I think prompted us really to start this space. And so my story is a story of, I feel like it's a story of phases. So my first phase was a phase that I saw a country, my country, Somalia, disintegrate right in front of my eyes. A neighbor, it is one of the worst wars. It's a civil war. A civil war is one that is horrendous, because a neighbor whom you trusted, it becomes your enemy the next day. And you have to run away from them, or you have to hide from them. You lose your sense of trust. And I came from that. So the first 8 years of, I was only 22 years old at the time. And I had 2 children, and I fled war. Yeah, fled the war. As you can see, English is my third language or second language? I speak Somali, Swahili. I was also brought up in, just like Janine, I am Somali and left Somalia when I was 4 years old, lived in East Africa, Kenya, for all my childhood and teenhood. And then I went back to Somalia as a teenager who was married. I was married at 17. And then I went to the Arab world and lived there for a while and came back to Somalia. And then the war happened and I had to flee my homeland. And so in this time of being in different spaces, I was I didn't know what belonging meant, because Somalia was my homeland and yet I had to flee from it. I came to Kenya and they wouldn't let me in because I had Somali children. And then I came to Australia 8 years later. And I was a very lucky refugee. I came through the reunion visa, and which meant that I had family here, my husband's family. And so I left everything I knew about myself back home and my family and came to Australia, which I had no idea and no prior knowledge of the Western culture. So I came from a totally dependent culture to a totally independent culture. And so my next phase, another 10 years of learning to be independent, started for me. And that was the place where I started to be in awe of the Western woman and to understand her more and to see how, she gained this independence. And so in this journey, I became curious. But I think the first 10 years were they were tumultuous years, because it was coming like a really big shift, which, was not an easy one. It felt like I was in another, you mentioned Alien before, Claire. So I did feel that I was in an alien world, because it was a really big shift. And I don't even think myself and my family were ready for it. So this time I had, I came with 4 children. I was pregnant with my 5th child and, came to a very affluent suburb, which is, most of you know, in Brighton. And I was very poor and very Black in this space. And, assumptions and labels and all kinds of things were made about myself and my family. And so those 10 years were 10 years which I was struggling to get to know the community. And I believe that culture is a currency. And at that time, our currency was deflated and we could not really buy much with it. And so we had to learn how to even trade with the currency that was given to us, which is this different culture. And so after that, these other 10 years would start. So maybe we'll talk about that after,
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is what I have observed with both you, Mariam, and Janine. And I've got to say that I've sort of been involved since the very inception, for those of you who are not familiar with it. So even though Janine and Mariam were the absolute founders of Space2b, I think I was one of the first that Janine ran this wacky idea past. But what I've observed over the years, meeting you two extraordinary, well, I knew Janine beforehand, but meeting you, Mariam, is that both of you have brought a sense of community with you from your other phases, lives, countries that you have been in. And although it may to you seem like it's quite alone, and you're having to battle through things, you have brought such rich sort of culture and sense of place with you that it's just, it's allowed Space2b to really flourish. So even though you might feel like you've left things behind, you've brought so much more with you to this country for us to gain and learn from. So you both arrived here, and Janine, you have 2 boys as well, so you've got kids. And when did you feel that Australia, or particularly Melbourne, was home for you, by either of you, if you wouldn't mind just giving us, when was there that sense of, oh, okay, this is where I want to settle for some time?
Shall I go first, Mariam, or you? I'll go first. Well, I think I still feel I belong to 2 places. So I haven't really got to that phase yet, is my answer. I went back and then came back again. And when my kids were at school, so when your kids are little at school, you build quite a strong community. And I've got all my family in Europe, in different places, but in Europe. So I think many people here in this chat would feel the same, I think. But yeah, you feel a part of you is always missing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, isn't it? Because I feel like, you are in different worlds, but, through my journey and having, witnessed different cultures and different, countries, and how you define belonging, or you define where is home. And I think we ask ourselves that question many times, where is home really? And then sometimes, I have spiritually come to a place where I feel that home actually is not a place. Home is the heart. Home is where you feel that you are safe. And I feel that when you really connect with, through these adversities, you connect it to self. You come to have a great understanding about yourself. But answering your question as home, as Melbourne, I do feel home now, because I went back many times to my homeland. I went back to Kenya. I traveled to America to see my relatives. I have a younger brother there. And, every time I came back, I felt like, oh my God, I'm going to Melbourne. I didn't like coming back. And then one time I went back home, and then I realized I had also surpassed the culture there. So you become, you're here and you don't belong, and then you go home and you don't belong there anymore, because things are so different. And so you're just caught in between. So I feel like this for me now is home, because this is where I found my true connection. I found a liberation in Australia. And I have found I have found my voice. I have created platforms which people actually, a community that I realize now that are, way beyond. I have realized as well that family is way beyond, just blood. You can create a family beyond blood relations. And once you realize that, then you just connect. So I'm really connected. I love Melbourne. Not to say Australia, but Melbourne is just a place that speaks to my heart. Yeah. And I love the people that I have, connected with here and I'm part of. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That's actually lovely. I've lived in Melbourne all my life, and that is really lovely to hear that somebody else loves it too. So then, Janine, so Space2b. So let's get back to the creation of Space2b. So your experience of being new with no community and no real connections to the familiar, how did that influence your idea to start Space2b, or what was the trigger that actually took you down the path of creating this concept?
I think, well, I've worked a lot with all different cultures, and it's always such a joy, and you learn so much. And yeah, I would never want to do anything else really. I used to work in environmental education with newly arrived groups up in Merry Creek in the north of Melbourne. And then I've done many things. Then I became a fashion designer, and I was a graphic designer, and I had my own label, and I wanted to make clothes here in Melbourne. And my friend who lives in Darwin, she works for they do tracing, where they find families that have been lost in war. And the first person she found was actually, who found their family, was a guy called Abdi. And he was actually Somali as well, which is kind of ironic. And he was a tailor, and he said to Jane, she was called Jane Black, he said, you know, when I settle in Australia, I would want to be a tailor. So she introduced him to me because he moved to Melbourne very soon after he arrived. And I invited him to my kitchen, and we were sitting, chatting. And I think he said, yeah, he said that sentence to me, and I think that was the trigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful. So the wheels were set in motion, obviously, and you knew Mariam, obviously.
I hadn't met her then, had I, Mariam?
No.
So how did you find one another?
I can't actually remember, but Mariam has a community garden, which you must all visit. It's beautiful. And I visited you because someone introduced us. And yeah, I used to go on, well, Mariam can talk about this, but I used to go on and on about this idea. Yeah.
The idea of Space2b, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I wanted a partner. I didn't want to do it alone. I don't like doing things alone.
And if I can add my little two bobs worth to this story. So I got a phone call from Janine one day to say, could you know, can I come over and have a cup of tea? I want to discuss this idea with you. I have this wonderful woman who, you know, is helping me to set up this organisation called Space2b. And what do you think? What do you think? And I was going, yeah, I think it's a great idea. And she said, well, why don't we go to Mariam's place? Her name's Mariam Issa. And she's got a garden down in Brighton, and maybe we could go there and have a chat and have a cup of tea. And my head just exploded, because a few weeks prior to that, I had been watching a gardening show, and Mariam was on the gardening show, and I was sitting in my lounge room by myself watching this show, enjoying the whole thing. And I was so inspired by Mariam that I actually said out loud, I want to meet you. Now, I don't generally do that, but there was just this, you know, something coming out of the TV at me. And Janine then, a few weeks later, said, we're going to Mariam Issa's. And it was almost like, oh my God, here I am sitting in this woman's kitchen. This is meant to be. This is real. This is very powerful. And so, you know, Mariam, can you sort of tell us that you're now on board? We've got a pop-up shop in Carlisle Street. So give us a bit of a rundown of how that first started.
Wow. You know, I feel excited because those days were really, really exciting. We had no idea what we were doing, but we were just, it was like a game for us. We were playing, you know. And I think, you know, when you're passionate about something, I think our passion was driving whatever it was. There was a force within us that was beyond us and was driving us to this. And that's how, you know, Janine found me, and she came. And at that time, I was also doing the Raw Garden, which had just started. I had launched a book called The Resilient Life. So I was in so many projects. And in my African chaosness, I'm not a planner. I don't understand the fact that you have to strategize about, you know, doing something and it has to become this. And so Janine came with all these ideas of like, yeah, we have to do this. And, you know, she was so scared. And I'm like, what are you scared about? You know, just do it. If you want to do it, just do it. And she goes, but how? I said, you have to trust. And she goes, what does that mean? She literally asked me that. What does that mean? I said, well, if you want to do something, and this is me just speak, and I'm just so candid about it, and it's how I see the world. I'm like, if you want to do something, just do it, and then you will find people who will support you in it. And she goes, but how? I'm like, throw the how away. Why do you want to do this? And she's like, this is why I want to do it. And then I said, then focus on that. And she goes, but I don't know how, you know. And she frustrated me. That's why I joined her, you know. And
you said, you Westerners, you're always worrying about where and who and how, and you never do anything. Just go and do it.
And she's like, when and how much money and this and I'm like, forget about all that. Let's just do it. And then I gave her homework. I said, go and find the place that you want to do this. And then when you find the place, we'll rent it out and we'll do this. And she goes, but I don't know. And
actually, Mariam, I left you with you having said, just trust. And I'm walking down the street and I'm going, oh, I don't even know what she means. I'm not on that planet. I need all the, you know, it's like I need a business plan. And then I see a little sign, which is on Carlisle Street, which is now, what are they? Burgers.
Grilled. It's grilled.
Grilled. This horrible purple and mustard shop, and there's a little sign and it says monthly cheap rent. And I thought, oh my God, what have we got to lose? So I rang you up and I said, look, I found this place, I'm going to do it. And Mariam went, I'm going to join you.
Yeah.
And it was quite daunting, actually.
Yeah. In the beginning, yeah.
It was a mess.
But it was also fun. It was also,
yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. And I think once we trusted, we never knew that it would become what it is today. And all we wanted and all we were looking at, and I think we were seeing, Janine could see the bigger vision, but for me, it was like, yeah, it's a place where we can bring people together and we can, you know, celebrate our differences and we can talk about our ideals. And, you know, so to me, it was simple. And because I had started the Raw Garden in my backyard as well, and it was happening, people were joining us and people were connecting with us. And so I saw the simplicity of things, and not so much as when we complicate. Like sometimes I feel like in the Western world, especially because when you're, you know, in the phases of professionalism or logic, there has to be a business plan and there has to be things like, you know, you have to follow a certain sequence. But for me, it was about humanity. It was about connections. It was about culture. It was about sharing. So coming from my communal culture, I felt that, yeah, this is what we did in our everyday life.
And you know, Mariam, we just did it, and we didn't have anything to lose except, well, we had $1,000, I think we put in, and we did more. Like I've got, my sister started up anyway, someone in my family started up an organization in England, and they were given all this money, and they spent the whole time just doing the business plan, but they didn't do anything. And she says, and you have done a million things because you just are doing it, you know. So there is a balance there.
Well, it was that sense that you know, people had a great idea and we just go, well, let's do it.
Yeah.
So, and what I think was really important about the original Space2b was that people walked in off the street and there was a table with tea, and anybody in that gallery space, the really Space2b, just be part of that space. And you didn't nobody felt pressured to purchase anything from the shop, the retail section. Nobody felt anything. And it was kind of like, oh, I'd really like to try and do something. And so people would find ways to enable that something, that creative thought to happen. And it did. It just exploded. It was just amazing.
Exactly.
You know,
And I think that, you know, when I started with the circle of grace, we created that circle of grace. And within that circle, I think is what happens is that people feel it, you know, when something is genuine and, you know, authentic, and you're just calling in, you know, a lot of love comes in.
Yeah.
And so we had, you know, a lot of that. People believed in us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really
and you know what it did, I think, is you know, in some ways I think you're pioneers. I know that there were a number of social enterprises around before Space2b, but it opened the floodgates for more and more, and I think they're absolutely necessary. So what would, I mean, I think you've talked about it in but what do you think is the uniqueness of Space2b, apart from the connection and everything? What is that makes Space2b unique?
I think one is what you said before. There were other social enterprises, but the other social enterprises were starting with money. We didn't start with any money. We started with trust.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it unique. And what also makes it really unique is because it's a very connecting space. It's about connections. And, you know, when you're creating any kind, you know, people, when they come from different cultures, they come with talents. They come with, you know, incredible, sometimes very incredible talents. And they cannot express that talent unless they find a place that will allow them to be vulnerable. And, you know, one of the most important things in humanity is to look at the human dignity. You know, we are a mirror for each other. And when I am in a place where I have been through a hardship, then I need the host country or whoever is hosting me to hold me in that space and to show me my strength. So when you show people their strength, sometimes, you know, there are times when you're not strong and you don't feel that strength. And when people put you down, then you become more weak. But when you create a space of showing others their strength, you're mirroring it for them. And so that automatically gives them a permission slip to be strong. And it allows them to be confident. So you don't build people's confidence, but you're just holding that space for them. It's already there. So sometimes we use the word help, you know, we help refugees and asylum. You don't help anyone. We support people and we support each other. And that's what upliftment means. You know, when you're holding a space for someone who is weak, you are literally uplifting them. And it depends on how you do it. You know, the way we do it at Space2b is, share your talent, share your, you know, and then we've made it in such a way that mainstream Australians who we, you know, think sometimes are strong also come there and they feel that they're giving something, but they're actually getting more from the person that they felt they were helping.
Yeah.
Because it's opening up their compassion. It's allowing them to see a side of another culture that they would not necessarily have been able to see. And then through that interaction, I think we learn so much. And it's what I said before, our conditioning becomes less and then our spirit comes into view. So that's why, you know, that's how I feel Space2b is unique and it's different.
I think also because our platform is art and design and food, I think that's something that, you know, when you come to a new country and, you know, I think a lot of the people we work with are really good cooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and when you're confident about one thing that you do, whether you speak the language or you know, whatever background you're from, if people want to eat your food and see what you make and go, oh my, you can see by people's faces, you know, the
it's
art.
very universal, isn't it? It's a universal language, food and art and creating.
Yeah.
So Janine, is there a particular story you have that you would say that you could pinpoint and say, this is when I knew we were on the right track?
I question that today all the time. But I think when you see I think often people don't say what they've got out of places. And the other day, well, a year ago, we had to ask everyone, you know, what Space2b had done for them, how had it supported them, and just the stories, the little sentences that came in was like, oh my God, you know, we're really doing something really great. And I mean, yeah. So
can you recall any of those sentences?
Oh God, just
put you on the spot here.
Oh my God, the whole page is just gorgeous, just makes you, you know,
yeah,
very. Luciana, can you remember any? You've got a whole load that came through as well. But I mean, just the fact that people keep coming back and are so loyal, and you know,
yeah,
I can't pinpoint one thing, but I mean, it's really lovely to get that, because often you're working so hard and you're battling and you actually forget about that side of thing, because you're always, as a social enterprise, you're always fighting for the money and the paying the bills and that's why I think working with Mariam is well, we don't work so closely together now, but we're always talking to each other, and I'm always getting advice off Mariam. You know, her spiritual side of things, it always is so good to bring us back to our humanity and who we are and why we're here. And you know, it's a really special partnership, I think. Yeah.
Well, I would dare and say that we've changed St. Kilda. It's become a better place with, you know, with Space2b, because it has widened as a community. I mean, you know, first of all, there's so many things that I can just really attribute to the success of this space. One, we've got an incredible friendship. The two of you, you know, Janine and Claire, become very intimate friends. And I see them as, you know, family beyond the blood relations. Our children have connected through Space2b, and they really do know each other. You know, and there's so many families, like beautiful Lucy. I can see Lucy over there. And, you know, there's so many people that I've got to know through the space, and I can literally feel that if I need anything today, I can open up to them. I can just call anyone and say, look, this is, and it's because we've interacted in that way. We've worked with a Somali woman who has a special art called, and she's from both my parents were from the nomadic traditions. And in the nomadic traditions, you build your own homes. And Muhibbo, who worked at Space2b, brought that. You know, my mother was a weaver as well. She weaved baskets and mats. And so Muhibbo was doing that at Space2b. And, you know, a place where I have contributed to, and now I could see another Somali woman who comes alongside and does the things that my mother used to do there. Just really speaks to my heart.
She always, sorry to interrupt, but Muhibbo always says, I'll do anything for Space2b. You were the first people that believed in me. And I think that sentence is quite strong, you know, of
Very strong. Yeah.
And I think it's also that thing of, you know, that it was very grassroots. You know, what we were doing in the beginning was, you know, oh, here's an idea. Oh, let's try this. So, you know, from the very first event we had, you know, which was Team Dark Chocolate, the beautiful Sudanese boys talking about trying to educate their community against skin bleaching. And, you know, that was just a little event to, you know, to all of a sudden people trusted what we were doing. And so we got Julian Burnside on, we got Tasneem Chopra, we, you know,
Gone from asylum seekers who
that's
support,
right.
you know?
Yes.
I remember that my son and myself went to Julian Burnside's office and we did a little video, you know, when we were raising funds for Space2b. And it was just really incredible for us to really connect with you know, the wider Melbourne community. I think it's just, incredible. So
and those in public, you know, who have a huge public outreach, you know, Judith Lucy, who believed in Space2b and, you know, have been able to get the word out in a way that a lot of other communities and a lot of other enterprises use. You know, they go, oh, well, we've got a budget for publicity, et cetera, et cetera. There was no budget. There was nothing. But people trusted. And, getting back to your trust, Mariam.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we also worked very closely with the council, the Port Phillip Council. And I remember that we did some of our arts was shown in the
in their art space.
The town hall, in the art space in the town hall.
The art space. So we actually we did a lot of events which had attracted more than 100, and you know, if every event would be 150 people. And so I believe that, you know, we've reached out to so many people and we've been building bridges. I think, you know, we are, the work that I do and the work that Space2b does is the fact that we bring people in, you know, there's a really wide gap that most often separate us, and there's a lot in the media that honestly, you know, when we're watching the media and the way, you know, the mainstream media portrays stories is very negative. So what we do is we bring people to this bridge of love, and we connect people in ways that are simple, in a way, very simple, but very, very, you know, the connection is deep. Once people are connected and they start talking from grassroots, then, you know, we have the ability to really have the difficult conversations. And that's why I'm coming back again to this circle of grace, because in the circle of grace, we can invite, you know, our grievances. We can talk about grievances, and yet we can respect each other, because it's you know, that.
Well, thank you, Mariam. That's beautiful. What I was going to say, we are in a circle of grace. Yes. Maybe it's time to give somebody the opportunity to ask some questions of either of you. If somebody would like to ask a question, you know, in person, please do so. If you feel a bit shy and would like to ask a question on the chat, then write something. But if you're happy to ask a question and put your hand up.
Lipstick.
We've got somebody talking about lipstick.
Claire, there's a question here for you.
Okay.
Claire, how did you get involved with Space2b? Why did you get involved? How that came about? Because you are right from the beginning. So what's your story about it?
Well, I think, I think it would be the fact that I got that phone call from Janine, Janine was a friend of mine, and she just rang me up to run by an idea she had. And the way she spoke about it with such passion what, you know, I said, oh my God, I've got to be part of this. I've really got to be part of this. So, you know, you never say something to Janine. Be very careful what you do say to Janine, because she'll take you up on it. So that's when she said, okay, great. Well, we're going to meet Mariam. And so that's when, you know, we went to Mariam's kitchen and we started formulating this kind of concept. So whilst Janine and Mariam are absolutely and utterly the founders, I'm sort of the little person who schleps along behindhand. And
that is far from the truth. You are not little, and you have contributed way too much than, you know, if not the same, you know.
Well, you know, I must say that I was seduced by the trust, by the passion, by everything, and it has been the most amazing journey for me.
Do you want to say what you have done with Judith Lucy and how with her? That's quite.
Oh, well, that was only one of the things. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things that I've been involved in that I find really, but I guess talking about the fact that, you know, Judith is somebody high profile in our community. We got a number of people who had come through Space2b to Mariam, you were one of them for a while, then your beautiful daughter Samaya became part of it, and we created a space where people could tell their stories about how they came to Australia, what was different, you know, in their experiences, but also we wanted to ask questions. So every week Judith and I would get together with this group of 8 of us or 10, I can't remember.
Yeah, 10.
And we had a series of questions that were, it was to create this thing called We Are Connected. And what Judith and I absolutely believed is that the differences are not as great as the similarities of humanity. So we would ask questions like, what was the first thing you'd hear of a morning when you woke up as a child? And everybody has a story about that. And the stories were vast, incredible. From, you know, hearing birds and hearing, you know, beautiful, to hearing bombs. And it was really sobering at times, you know, what we heard. But also, you know, what was your favorite? If you could go back to your childhood and have a meal that you could recreate, what would it be? So we'd talk about that. And every session was filled with laughter, explosive laughter and crying. And, you know, we just came away, Judith and I came away feeling incredibly blessed that we were with these beautiful people who were sharing stories that connected us. You know, we tried to make the questions as wacky as possible so that we, you know, we all got a sense of who this person was, and it allowed everybody to have the space to either cry, tell a funny story, have a rant, as Anu did, about chai, which was the funniest thing we have ever heard. She was saying how, you know, chai isn't what, you know, you think it is in Australia, and chai latte, and she was going on, she just, and we're all gobsmacked. It was,
Don't say chai tea.
Hilarious. Yeah. So it was a beautiful way of connecting with Judith Lucy as the person rather than the comedian that most of us know, and to just offer ourselves, you know, all of us. You know, this is our universal stories. These are the things that make us human and make us, you know, all together. And it was a very beautiful experience, and I think Judith and I probably got the most out of it.
But then you all did a performance on stage to over 200 and something people.
Yes.
And I think just that was a very powerful experience for everyone that was involved. Everyone,
yes.
you know, the confidence that.
Well, that was what was really, you know, so many people said, oh, I'm so shy, I wouldn't, you know, I can't get up in front of 10 people. But by the time we had done 10 or 12 weeks of these, you know, weekly workshops, if you want to call them that, everybody was happy to share part of their life and part of their journey.
I know, whether their English was good or not, whether amazing. Yeah, it was amazing.
It was beautiful. Yeah. So yeah, so I don't know, that's a long-winded sorry. We think Mariam can talk, but really.
No, I'm conscious we are over time. There's another question here, but if someone else would like to ask a question,
Yeah, please put up your hand if you've got a question.
Do we have a time for the question I have? There is.
Yes, please.
Mariam, you said that from the way you grew up was a very dependent society, and then you came to an independent society. How do you do with your kids? How do you get the balance? You balance that two very different and very opposed, way to grow up. How do you do that?
So yeah, when I came to the West, I came as a, in the communal culture dependency, is the dependency means you really don't know yourself. You just know yourself within the culture. And so independence, on the other hand, is I don't care about anybody else, but this is, this is me. And so I think both are good, but they can't be on their own. They have to be connected. So when I came and I realized about the independence and got to know myself, then I realized, wow, that's why, no one, I always believe that no one is ever anywhere randomly. So we are called to the spaces that we occupy or the spaces that we are in. So I didn't come to the West just randomly. I came here to remember something about myself and to remind others, of course, about my communal culture. So when I got the two, it became interdependence. I feel like I have self-actualized. I've come to a place where I can now have boundaries for myself. Whereas in communal cultures, you don't have much of a boundary. You're working almost always with the others. You can't get out of the box, so to speak. Yep. And so I think for my children, they're the ones who actually taught me how to do that, because children are here to challenge us. They are here to push the boundary. And so I think not only the culture that I have come around, but also my children interacting with that culture is what allowed me to do that. And it's the term I used before, the currency. You learn how to use the currency, and then you also learn how to strengthen your currency. So I learned how to strengthen my cultural currency and how to use the currency of the host country that I've come to. So that has given me an opportunity and a platform to be able to express, but to also explore more and be more curious into what else can I do. And I think that's where life becomes really very exciting, because you become an explorer and you learn how to integrate your cultural currency and this new currency. And so I think, for people who are, for all of you here tonight, I think that's the place to be in. I mean, we're always challenged by life. And I think if we can use our currencies from, both cultures, and if we can even, get out of our comfort zones into getting to know another culture, it's very important. And I think that's one of the things Space2b is really good for, to come and challenge yourself. And I think that's one of, our volunteers, when they come and volunteer with us, they get that. They're challenged. One, we had people who don't speak the language, and so they feel like language is everything. But when you come and you connect, you realize that language is simply, it's not important anymore. because you've got this language of connection, you've got this language of love, and you become confident. And so it doesn't even matter if you don't speak good English. So we've seen that in the people that we've worked with in the early stages. So yeah, I think it's just, it's growing, I think, and growing means that we are expanding in our experiences. And the more our experiences expand, the more we know more, I think. And especially as women, I feel that then this is where we can step up into our leadership and create a more better world for all of us. Our men aren't doing such a good job at the moment.
Now, there's one question here from Rahila, and I think we might, after that, we might have to end because I believe our session's almost, is it over? We've gone over time, is that right? Okay, so Rahila, for Janine, would you say you've achieved your mission, or are you working towards it and there's lots more left?
I think we've achieved our mission in terms of what we envisaged on the day Mariam and I first met. I think that vision is definitely happening in a beautiful way. I think we haven't quite got there in that we're a social enterprise, and a social enterprise is meant to pay for itself through its income of its different businesses. And at the moment, we're still relying too much, in my opinion, on volunteers, even though our model will always have grants and always have volunteers. Yeah, so we haven't quite got there yet in that sense of the word. Yes, in that angle.
Well, I guess
quite important.
And I guess, having everybody here, and thank you everybody for coming and putting the word out and making it. And, I know that I can see a number of people who have been with Space2b for almost as long as me, who, passionately put out this word. And the more we do that, the more Space2b will come to that state where, it's running itself. But I guess we can't lose what the beginning of Space2b was, which is, the trust, the why not? Let's just do it. Let's just enable somebody to be supported to achieve what they want to do. And I think that happens every single time you walk into Space2b. So I would like to thank Mariam Issa, Janine Laurie, for your beautiful, candid speech. Both of you, you've talked so beautifully. I'd also like to thank Luciana Ramos for being a fabulous techie. Because without you, it wouldn't happen, mate. And I would like to thank everybody who's come on to this chat. Feels like home, question and answer, because it's so lovely to see other people's faces. I'm sure we've all got that lockdown syndrome of, oh my God, do I have to look at my family once more? But so it's beautiful to see beautiful faces here, and thank you everybody for being here. And we're looking forward to the next one, which is next week. Is that right, Janine?
We have next week, we have a delicious live cooking Zoom. Yes, and then the week after we have beautiful music from Iran. And then every Friday, we're doing fun Fridays with a drink, but none of us are drinking. Mariam and I
don't drink, so none of us drink.
And then on the 8th, we have a Q&A with Hisco, who's...
isn't that on the 15th, Janine?
8th, it's on the 8th. He's moved to the 8th, and he's going to do a Q&A banter with Ben Showery. Is that how you pronounce his name? Showery, who runs Attica. and they're really good friends. Hisco once painted Ben along with some very famous chefs from around the world. It's up in the city in I can't remember the name of the lane. Anyway, in the little city lanes. So they're really good friends, and Hisco is going to paint our laneway with kids' games, so that our laneway cafe with the kids' games, it'll be just beautiful. So that'll be too much fun. You'll have to register for that on the 8th. And they're quite fun. I don't know if any of you know Ben, but Luciano sent me some videos. He's totally mad. Yeah, in a good way. So yeah, Ahida, you should come to that. You'll love it. Ahida's also an amazing chef.
Right. Okay, well, thank you. Look after yourselves, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thanks so much, Claire.
my pleasure.
Yes,
Absolutely
thank you,
my
Claire, for being with us from the
Thank you,
beginning.
What a ride. What a ride.
Setting up that shop at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for having us.
Thank you so much. Was really lovely to hear both of your stories. Was really nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Keep safe.
Bye.
Have a weekend.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.